Zhou Shu Xia woke up in the darkness, only to realize he was trapped inside a strange game. Standing before him was Luo Zi Lu, a man who believed Zhou Shu Xia was connected to his younger brother's death. To survive and return to the real world, Zhou Shu Xia had to uncover the truth, while changing the way Luo Zi Lu saw him. But the game did more than give him missions. It kept dragging forgotten memories back to the surface. A missing phone, a mysterious video, and a trail of clues kept pushing Zhou Shu Xia closer to the truth. The deeper he investigated, the more he realized that Luo Zi Yu's death might be far more complicated than Luo Zi Lu had ever believed. Even more dangerous. The system began changing the rules, forcing Zhou Shu Xia to choose between the mission and his own feelings. And Luo Zi Lu, who once only wanted to find someone to blame, began showing moments that left Zhou Shu Xia unable to figure out what he was really thinking. But just when things seemed to be changing, a shocking piece of evidence appeared and pushed Zhou Shu Xia back into the center of suspicion. And if the memories the system is about to reveal are real, then the person Zhou Shu Xia trusts most may also be hiding a secret. So what really happened to Luo Zi You? And is Zhou Shu Xia truly innocent? Or has he forgotten part of the truth himself? To find the answer, Zhou Shu Xia has only one choice: keep moving forward. Starting with Chapter 1. In the darkness, Zhou Shu Xia trembled and reminded himself that he had always been afraid of the dark. But Luo Zi Lu kept putting pressure on him, forcing Zhou Shu Xia to convince himself that he was also afraid of violence and insects. Even after being knocked down and placed under constant pressure, Zhou Shu Xia stayed focused, searching for any chance to escape. Luo Zi Lu coldly walked away, as if he wanted to see how long Zhou Shu Xia could endure. Zhou Shu Xia suddenly laughed without realizing it, then quickly reminded himself that he absolutely could not fall asleep. Sitting under the shower, he struggled to support his exhausted body and force himself back onto his feet, realizing that an opportunity was finally coming. Zhou Shu Xia immediately shut off the water and decided to seize every possible chance to get out. The pain made him grit his teeth, but Zhou Shu Xia knew he could never let his guard down around Luo Zi Lu. So even while exhausted and breathing heavily, he stayed alert and began preparing for his next move. But in the silent room, the sound of the chain once again reminded Zhou Shu Xia that he still had not truly escaped. Luo Zi Lu suddenly appeared, blocking his way and coldly reminding him that he was still searching for the truth behind his younger brother's death. Zhou Shu Xia trembled under the pressure, while the atmosphere between them grew more tense with every passing moment. What frightened Zhou Shu Xia most was that Luo Zi Lu had returned much sooner than he had expected. Only then did Zhou Shu Xia realize that he had somehow entered a dangerous romance game built around confinement and survival. Luo Zi Lu was the male lead of the game, and he believed that Zhou Shu Xia was connected to his younger brother's death. But Zhou Shu Xia's mission was completely different. He had to uncover the truth while also changing the way Luo Zi Lu saw him. The pain of losing his younger brother had driven Luo Zi Lu to lose control and believe that Zhou Shu Xia was responsible for the tragedy. Since he had no memories of what happened, Zhou Shu Xia could not give a clear explanation and had no choice but to prove that he was innocent. But Zhou Shu Xia quickly realized that simply making Luo Zi Lu angry would not be enough to complete the game's mission. He began calculating how to push Luo Zi Lu's emotions to their limit, believing that this might be the key to moving the mission forward. And finally, the moment Zhou Shu Xia had been waiting for arrived. He realized that he had stepped into the most important part of the script. The system immediately warned him that his expression looked more excited than frightened, forcing him to adjust his emotions. Yet the harder he tried to hide it, the more Zhou Shu Xia realized something strange. Deep down, he was becoming drawn into the very sense of danger he was supposed to be pretending to fear. A tense atmosphere filled the room as Zhou Shu Xia was held firmly by Luo Zi Lu, leaving him with almost no control over the situation. Luo Zi Lu looked at Zhou Shu Xia and noticed a few familiar features, making his emotions even harder to control. Luo Zi Lu's close presence made Zhou Shu Xia tense, but he tried to stay calm under the intense pressure. Zhou Shu Xia froze for a moment as the system suddenly began loading fragments of memories connected to the incident. Images gradually appeared in his mind, revealing a moment when Luo Zi You had desperately called for help. Zhou Shu Xia used his phone to record the images, as if he were trying to capture a clue that could change the entire story. When he came back to his senses, Zhou Shu Xia was shaken by the possibility that Luo Zi You might actually have been connected to him. But before he could think any further, Luo Zi Lu approached and once again kept Zhou Shu Xia under his control. Seeing that Zhou Shu Xia's wrist was still secured, Luo Zi Lu coldly claimed that only he could deal with the situation. Luo Zi Lu then took out several tools, making Zhou Shu Xia realize that their confrontation was far from over. He gave Zhou Shu Xia a difficult choice: tell the truth and make things easier, or stay silent and face the consequences. Zhou Shu Xia struggled to break free, but quickly realized that he did not have enough strength to escape. At that moment, Zhou Shu Xia was forced to play an important card. He revealed that he had a recording of Luo Zi You. He quickly explained that the recording was stored on an old phone that had been damaged, causing Luo Zi Lu to pause and reconsider the situation. An unexpected phone call came in, temporarily drawing Luo Zi Lu's attention to another matter. From the conversation, Zhou Shu Xia realized that Luo Zi Lu seemed to be preparing to leave and deal with a personal matter. Before leaving, Luo Zi Lu still reminded Zhou Shu Xia to hand over the recording when he returned. He left a clear warning: if Zhou Shu Xia was lying, he would have to face the consequences. The door finally closed, leaving Zhou Shu Xia alone in the room that had already made him uneasy from the beginning. In the prolonged silence, Zhou Shu Xia guessed that time in the game was moving quickly and that Luo Zi Lu would return soon. But instead of waiting in despair, Zhou Shu Xia gave a mysterious smile, as if he had already started planning his next move. In his dream, Zhou Shu Xia returned to his childhood memories, where familiar sounds slowly pulled him back into a deeply unsettling time. When he was young, Zhou Shu Xia was once pressured by other children to take part in strange games, leaving him unsure of how to react. Their teasing and unusual treatment made Zhou Shu Xia feel increasingly different from everyone around him. Young Zhou Shu Xia could only respond mechanically, making the other children believe that something about him was different. In those memories, one sentence kept repeating. Zhou Shu Xia seemed unable to understand what it truly meant to be normal. Zhou Shu Xia suddenly woke up, confused by the realization that he had not dreamed about those childhood memories in a very long time. What caught his attention most was that the name Zhou Shu Xia still appeared in the dream, as if those memories truly belonged to him. Back in the present, Zhou Shu Xia looked around the room and began wondering why Luo Zi Lu still had not returned. Just then, the door opened from the outside, signaling that Luo Zi Lu had finally come back. Zhou Shu Xia immediately sat up and tried to appear calm, but inside, he was worried because he still had not found the phone containing the crucial clue. Luo Zi Lu walked in with a cold expression, and Zhou Shu Xia quickly realized that their confrontation was far from over. Luo Zi Lu took out a tool, making Zhou Shu Xia instantly alert as he struggled to figure out what the man planned to do next. Zhou Shu Xia panicked at the things Luo Zi Lu had prepared, while the man remained frighteningly calm. Luo Zi Lu made it clear that he needed the video related to Luo Zi You, and he would not remain patient if Zhou Shu Xia could not provide a clue. Zhou Shu Xia could only explain that he remembered nothing about the phone, possibly because his memories after the incident were still incomplete. As Luo Zi Lu continued to pressure him, Zhou Shu Xia became even more nervous, but he forced himself to stay focused and look for a way to turn the situation around. Luo Zi Lu coldly warned him that he would not accept another explanation based on memory loss. Yet despite the fear and pressure, Zhou Shu Xia gave a strange, uneasy smile, as if an entirely different emotion was beginning to surface inside him. In memories of Luo Zi Lu, cheers echoed through a match as he was praised as an opponent who was nearly unbeatable. Luo Zi Lu emerged from those memories as a cold and decisive man who always wanted to finish things as quickly and cleanly as possible. Back in the present, Zhou Shu Xia was still under pressure from Luo Zi Lu, but he firmly insisted that he genuinely could not remember the video related to Luo Zi You. As Luo Zi Lu continued to pressure him, Zhou Shu Xia could only endure and do his best to keep himself from losing control. Eventually, Luo Zi Lu stopped when the tool in his hand stopped working, while Zhou Shu Xia was nearly exhausted. Just then, the system suddenly announced that Zhou Shu Xia had completed the mission and began issuing his reward. A new control panel appeared, leaving Zhou Shu Xia stunned because he had no idea how many hidden functions the system still had. Zhou Shu Xia cautiously called out to Luo Zi Lu, then moved closer to check on him. When he noticed that Luo Zi Lu was not responding, the system immediately activated the main quest and warned that failure would result in part of Zhou Shu Xia's mental energy being taken away. When the status panel appeared, Zhou Shu Xia finally saw the indicators for emotions, vitality, and mental energy, realizing that this mission was far more dangerous than he had imagined. The temporary pause was about to end, forcing Zhou Shu Xia to quickly return to his original position before everything returned to normal. In the final moments of the pause, Zhou Shu Xia told himself that no matter what he had to sacrifice, he could not allow the mission to fail. The system immediately assigned a new mission. Zhou Shu Xia had to show Luo Zi Lu the video related to Luo Zi You. But one major problem remained. Zhou Shu Xia had absolutely no idea where the phone containing the video was. When the pause ended, Zhou Shu Xia immediately realized that Luo Zi Lu might have heard what he had just said. Luo Zi Lu turned back in the sudden silence, and calmly remarked that Zhou Shu Xia was actually smarter than he had expected. He realized that Zhou Shu Xia was trying to spark his curiosity. but he also warned that he would not let go of anything connected to Luo Zi You. Luo Zi Lu stepped closer and stated firmly that even without the video, he would still track down everyone connected to the case. At the same time, the system began loading more memories of what Luo Zi You had experienced, signaling that the next mission would once again revolve around the hidden truth. The system suddenly activated a fragment of memory, taking Zhou Shu Xia back to a moment directly connected to the mysterious phone. In the memory, Zhou Shu Xia realized that he was holding the exact phone Luo Zi Lu had been searching for. He quickly understood that the phone might contain an important clue about Luo Zi You, but the people in the memory kept mentioning danger and tried to steer the conversation in another direction, making Zhou Shu Xia even more determined to find out what had happened. Zhou Shu Xia gradually realized that the memory did not change no matter how much he tried to interfere, as if everything had already been predetermined. A disturbing question then crossed his mind: if the memory could not be changed, was Luo Zi Yu's death also destined to happen? When the memory fragment ended, the system immediately ordered Zhou Shu Xia to complete a new mission within a limited time. Back in reality, Zhou Shu Xia still had not found the phone, while Luo Zi Lu continued demanding the truth about Luo Zi You. Luo Zi Lu placed a special band around Zhou Shu Xia's ankle, making him realize that finding a chance to leave would now be even harder. Before Zhou Shu Xia could react, Luo Zi Lu coldly ordered him to leave the room. When Zhou Shu Xia protested because of the band around his ankle, Luo Zi Lu calmly explained that it was a special device he had prepared in advance. Then Luo Zi Lu ordered Zhou Shu Xia to crawl out on his own, turning an already tense situation into another difficult challenge. As he followed the order, Zhou Shu Xia realized that his pride was being tested at every moment, and that any resistance could make the situation even worse. He began to understand that if someone kept enduring pressure for too long, they could gradually become numb, stop resisting, or eventually break down. Yet strangely, when Zhou Shu Xia realized that Luo Zi Lu was watching him, he felt more than just fear. Another uncontrollable emotion began to surface. Luo Zi Lu's cold gaze made Zhou Shu Xia even more curious about what he might do next in this game. Instead of seeing Luo Zi Lu simply as someone carrying out a mission, Zhou Shu Xia began hoping that he would take more initiative and create more unexpected variables. And that strange sense of anticipation made Zhou Shu Xia realize that his emotions were drifting further and further away from the role the system had assigned him. Zhou Shu Xia lay in the basement, growing restless as he began thinking of a more proactive way to complete his mission. Remembering the previous mission, he immediately called up the system to check the deadline and completion requirements. The mission panel appeared, confirming that Zhou Shu Xia had only 10 minutes left to locate the video connected to Luo Zi You. Just as he realized the countdown had begun, Luo Zi Lu appeared with some food and placed it in front of him. Luo Zi Lu ordered Zhou Shu Xia to finish everything within the given time, making the already tense atmosphere even more intense. With his options running out, Zhou Shu Xia suddenly remembered a clue about the phone and quickly told Luo Zi Lu what he knew. But when Luo Zi Lu asked for the name of the person who had taken the phone, Zhou Shu Xia froze, because that information did not exist anywhere in his memory. His vague answer immediately made Luo Zi Lu suspicious, and Zhou Shu Xia realized that he had just revealed something unusual. Luo Zi Lu lost patience and continued putting pressure on him, forcing Zhou Shu Xia to stay calm and keep the situation from spiraling out of control. Just then, the system warned that only 3 minutes remained. If the mission failed, Zhou Shu Xia would have to pay with part of his mental energy. With no other choice, Zhou Shu Xia opened a side mission, temporarily stopping the main mission's countdown. A new mission appeared, requiring him to break the window of room 202 within the time limit, making Zhou Shu Xia suspect that he had entered another memory fragment. Realizing that the task seemed relatively simple, Zhou Shu Xia quickly decided to complete it before trying to understand what was happening. He found a fire extinguisher and used it to break the window of room 202, opening up a completely new path. Moments later, a voice suddenly came from the other side, immediately drawing Zhou Shu Xia's attention to whoever was inside the room. The person spoke about being left behind and thanked whoever had come to pick them up, making Zhou Shu Xia realize that this memory was connected to someone else. While the system continued running, Zhou Shu Xia noticed a familiar figure appearing inside the room. The person called out in surprise, and Zhou Shu Xia realized that he was facing an important character from this memory fragment. The final name mentioned was Lu Qi, opening up a new clue in Zhou Shu Xia's search for the truth behind Luo Zi You. Zhou Shu Xia hurriedly said that he had remembered the name of someone who appeared in his memory, but Luo Zi Lu immediately assumed he was only trying to stall for time. Luo Zi Lu lost control when Luo Zi You was mentioned and repeatedly questioned Zhou Shu Xia about his earlier statements. Pushed to his limit, Zhou Shu Xia still wore an unusual expression, as if the greater the pressure became, the more his emotions drifted away from normal. Memories of Luo Zi You suddenly flooded back, along with images of Zhou Shu Xia desperately trying to save someone he had had once been unable to protect. Amid the chaotic memories, the name Lu Qi finally became clear in Zhou Shu Xia's mind. Zhou Shu Xia immediately insisted that Lu Qi was the person who had once appeared beside Luo Zi You, but this information only made Luo Zi Lu even more suspicious. Just then, the system warned that only 1 minute remained, forcing Zhou Shu Xia to give an answer before it was too late. Zhou Shu Xia tried to explain that Lu Qi was the person he remembered, but Luo Zi Lu completely refused to believe him. With only a few seconds left, Luo Zi Lu revealed that Lu Qi had once saved Luo Zi Yu's life, leaving Zhou Shu Xia even more confused about what was really happening. The mission ended in failure. The system immediately deducted mental energy, causing Zhou Shu Xia's condition to become unstable. Distorted memories continued flooding his mind, pulling him back into chaotic and unsettling images from his childhood. Even as all he could hear were mocking voices and laughter, Zhou Shu Xia kept repeating that he was not afraid, while feeling a strange emotion he could not explain. His body gradually became harder to control, making Zhou Shu Xia realize that the loss of mental energy was directly affecting his ability to act. With no other choice, Zhou Shu Xia immediately opened the system shop and spent all his gold on an item that could restore his mental energy. The system confirmed his recovery, but at the same time judged that Zhou Shu Xia was no longer suitable to continue the game and began preparing to end his journey. Zhou Shu Xia struggled to stay conscious, reminding himself that this was his game and that he had to make it through in order to return to the real world. In the darkness, Zhou Shu Xia tried to recall familiar happy memories, but what appeared instead was a painful memory involving his family. The memory shattered as an image of his mother appeared, leaving Zhou Shu Xia overwhelmed and completely disoriented. Just as his mental energy suddenly began to recover, Zhou Shu Xia had no time to understand what was happening before Luo Zi Lu called Lu Qi. Luo Zi Lu took the initiative to invite Lu Qi to his house, saying that he had a few things he needed to ask, setting the stage for their next confrontation. At the convenience store, the employees were frustrated because Zhou Shu Xia had suddenly quit and disappeared, leaving everyone with extra work. Lu Qi came by to ask about Zhou Shu Xia, making the employees realize that the two seemed to have a rather special connection. Lu Qi gently defended Zhou Shu Xia, believing that he must have had his own reasons and was not as irresponsible as everyone thought. Hearing this, Luo Zi Lu appeared and began to question the true relationship between Lu Qi and Zhou Shu Xia. Remembering their call from the night before, Luo Zi Lu had invited Lu Qi to meet him, but Lu Qi could only arrange a meeting a few days later. Luo Zi Lu mentioned Luo Zi You, while Lu Qi insisted that he had always been the person he cared about most. Back in the present, Luo Zi Lu stood outside and watched Lu Qi chatting casually with the employees before quietly leaving the store. Down in the basement, Zhou Shu Xia was so hungry that he was nearly exhausted, so he repeatedly called the system, hoping it would give him a new mission. The system immediately activated a side mission with the condition that he had to hold someone's right hand within 2 minutes. The scene shifted to an old memory, where a stranger appeared at the store and asked Zhou Shu Xia to bring some medicine. Zhou Shu Xia realized that he was taking on Lu Qi's identity and understood that this mission required him to play Lu Qi's role. When the stranger tried to cause trouble, Lu Qi stepped in and forced him to leave the store immediately. After things settled down, Zhou Shu Xia, still in Lu Qi's role, could not understand why the mission required him to hold the person's right hand. The memory continued as the younger Zhou Shu Xia questioned Lu Qi about what he had just done, while Lu Qi could only give an explanation related to the mission. The system summarized the mission and confirmed that Lu Qi's first meeting with Zhou Shu Xia had created a special connection between them. Zhou Shu Xia received his reward and immediately used the gold to purchase an item that could restore his mental energy, even though the recovery remained extremely low. Just then, Luo Zi Lu returned to the basement, making Zhou Shu Xia realize that his main mission still had not been activated. Luo Zi Lu sat down in front of Zhou Shu Xia and called him closer, immediately putting him on guard because he thought he was about to be treated the same way as before. But this time, Luo Zi Lu simply took a towel and began tending to the injuries on Zhou Shu Xia's body, leaving him unsure how to react. That unexpected gentleness left Zhou Shu Xia emotionally confused, because he could not understand why Luo Zi Lu had suddenly changed. Luo Zi Lu took the opportunity to ask about Lu Qi, while Zhou Shu Xia recalled the time they had first met during Christmas the previous year. As Zhou Shu Xia remembered that encounter, the system also registered a slight increase in his mental energy. Luo Zi Lu quietly realized that if he treated Zhou Shu Xia better, perhaps Zhou Shu Xia would eventually reveal what he knew. After taking care of the visible injuries, Luo Zi Lu asked Zhou Shu Xia to let him check the remaining ones. Zhou Shu Xia froze at the unexpected request, having no idea what Luo Zi Lu intended decided to do next. Luo Zi Lu continued tending to Zhou Shu Xia's remaining injuries, but his cold tone immediately put Zhou Shu Xia on guard. Zhou Shu Xia was confused by Luo Zi Lu's unpredictable change in attitude, unsure whether he should keep acting or simply face the situation as it was. Luo Zi Lu quickly finished treating the injuries and stood up, leaving Zhou Shu Xia to take care of the rest himself. He coldly warned that if Zhou Shu Xia had to handle everything on his own, there would be consequences, leaving Zhou Shu Xia completely speechless. After a moment of thought, Zhou Shu Xia reminded himself that given his current situation, Luo Zi Lu being willing to care for him at all was already unbelievable. Luo Zi Lu tossed him some food and told him to eat immediately, leaving Zhou Shu Xia wondering whether it was actually meant for him. But when he realized it was only an egg and smoked meat sandwich, Zhou Shu Xia immediately ate it with relief. Luo Zi Lu revealed that it had already been 3 days since Zhou Shu Xia disappeared, and that Lu Qi had also taken time off work to search for him. The information surprised Zhou Shu Xia, because everything seemed to be moving in a direction he had never expected. Luo Zi Lu remained calm and directly asked how close Zhou Shu Xia and Lu Qi really were. Zhou Shu Xia admitted that he had once liked Lu Qi because Lu Qi had helped him, but later realized that Lu Qi cared too much and could make him feel overwhelmed. That answer made Luo Zi Lu continue probing, while his expression grew colder whenever he mentioned Luo Zi You. Zhou Shu Xia suddenly replied that he preferred people who were not too kind to him, a statement that immediately made Luo Zi Lu pause. In that moment, Luo Zi Lu remembered Luo Zi You once telling him that a brother did not always need to treat him too gently. When Luo Zi Lu asked why, Zhou Shu Xia simply gave a sad smile and said that he had never felt worthy of being liked by anyone. Zhou Shu Xia continued hiding his deeper pain behind a calm expression, hoping that showing some vulnerability might soften Luo Zi Lu. He secretly calculated that if Luo Zi Lu was truly a good person, his sense of guilt might become an opportunity to move closer to the condition for clearing the level. But Luo Zi Lu was not moved at all. Instead, he became angry, believing that Zhou Shu Xia was deliberately using his vulnerable appearance to make him forgive him. Zhou Shu Xia realized that his plan had backfired as Luo Zi Lu became increasingly impatient and decided to respond according to what Zhou Shu Xia had just said. Just as Lu Qi appeared, Luo Zi Lu coldly declared that if Zhou Shu Xia truly hated him, then he would deal with the matter himself. Lu Qi angrily threw his phone aside, believing that Luo Zi Lu had no right to threaten him when Luo Zi You had died because of circumstances connected to him. In the heavy silence, Lu Qi still could not let go of the past, and wondered why, even after Luo Zi You was gone, the people connected to him continued to appear. A memory returned of Luo Zi You coming to Lu Qi, hoping to stay by his side while struggling emotionally. Back in the present, Lu Qi spoke of Luo Zi You with pain, and wondered why he still seemed determined to pull Lu Qi back into the past. Lu Qi thought of Zhou Shu Xia and admitted that he truly missed him, but he had no idea where Zhou Shu Xia was now. Just then, Luo Zi Lu announced that Lu Qi had arrived and coldly said that if Lu Qi hated Zhou Shu Xia, he could deal with the matter himself. Zhou Shu Xia immediately reacted, realizing that if something happened to Lu Qi, the last remaining clue about Luo Zi Yu's death could disappear. He quickly realized that his goal and Luo Zi Lu's goal were actually the same, uncovering the truth behind Luo Zi Yu's death. Luo Zi Lu pressured him again, forcing Zhou Shu Xia to do whatever he could to keep Lu Qi safe, and uncover the missing clues. Zhou Shu Xia argued that if Lu Qi disappeared as well, there would be no one left who could provide information about Luo Zi Yu's final days. He tried to ease the tension with a half-joking remark, but Luo Zi Lu remained silent in response to his increasingly unpredictable words. When Zhou Shu Xia continued testing his reaction, Luo Zi Lu maintained his cold gaze and refused to let his emotions interfere with his original purpose. Luo Zi Lu suddenly took a phone call and used the opportunity to step outside and open the door for Lu Qi. Before leaving, he signaled for Zhou Shu Xia to stay quiet and warned him not to let Lu Qi discover that he was there. Luo Zi Lu removed the restraint from Zhou Shu Xia and warned him that if he wanted to learn the truth, he absolutely could not let Lu Qi realize he was there. Immediately afterward, the system activated the main mission. Zhou Shu Xia had to escape from the basement before Lu Qi left. Failure would result in his mental energy being taken away. Luo Zi Lu opened the door and invited Lu Qi inside, but Lu Qi remained outside because he did not want to enter a place filled with painful memories of Luo Zi You. Lu Qi coldly brought up the past, and said that he had tolerated Luo Zi Lu for far too long, all because of Luo Zi You. Another memory of Luo Zi You surfaced, showing him once trying to explain himself and defend his older brother against Luo Zi Lu's cold remarks. Back in the present, Luo Zi Lu warned Lu Qi that many people outside were searching for clues about Luo Zi Yu's death, so staying there might not be safe either. Finally, Luo Zi Lu brought Lu Qi into the room and asked him to recount once again what had happened on the day Luo Zi Yu died. As the confrontation grew more intense, Zhou Shu Xia was startled by a loud noise coming from upstairs, fearing that his presence was about to be discovered. Zhou Shu Xia worried that if Luo Zi Lu accidentally let him out, the mission would end immediately and everything he had done could be wasted. He began thinking carefully, wondering whether Luo Zi Lu truly wanted to get more clues from Lu Qi, or if he was simply using his own methods to continue the investigation. Thinking about how sad Luo Zi Lu looked whenever he mentioned his younger brother, Zhou Shu Xia decided to gather more clues before trying to escape the basement. Even so, he admitted that his time there had given him enough opportunity to observe Luo Zi Lu and understand more about the kind of person he was. Zhou Shu Xia began analyzing the two previous side missions and realized that their common factor might be connected to his own mental state. But after trying again and receiving no response from the system, he understood that the conditions for triggering a side mission were not as simple as deliberately hurting himself, since he could not rely on another mission appearing. Zhou Shu Xia had to observe the basement and find a way to complete the main mission before it was too late. He remembered the pipe he had noticed earlier, which might carry sounds from the bathroom upstairs down into the basement. Zhou Shu Xia continued investigating, but received no response, making him wonder if no one outside was paying attention to him anymore. In the middle of his confusion, he suddenly realized that if he wanted Lu Qi to discover him, all he had to do was open the door in front of him. As he approached the door, Zhou Shu Xia suddenly remembered a warning from the past telling him never to open it, but that very warning only made him more curious about what was being hidden behind the door. Standing before that choice, Zhou Shu Xia began questioning himself for the first time, wondering whether he truly still wanted to return to his old world. A mysterious voice continued tempting him to open the door, promising that what lay beyond could lead him to a place where his spirit could finally be free. Zhou Shu Xia closed his eyes and accepted that his life had already been filled with hardship, then decided to move forward instead of continuing to run away. But the moment he took another step, fear suddenly surged through him, making Zhou Shu Xia hesitate in front of the door. The ankle device suddenly triggered an alert, causing Zhou Shu Xia to lose his balance as he realized he was entering a restricted area. As he struggled to get back up, Zhou Shu Xia suddenly realized that Luo Zi Lu was still outside, and that thought immediately made him want to move toward the door even more. Zhou Shu Xia became determined to meet Luo Zi Lu because once he got outside, he could continue looking for a way to complete the mission. At the same time, Luo Zi Lu realized that the ankle device had moved beyond its permitted range, and immediately took control of the situation to stop Zhou Shu Xia from going any farther. A sound from Luo Zi Yu's room caught Luo Zi Lu's attention, while he continued pressuring Lu Qi to answer questions about the birthday cake. As Luo Zi Lu increased the device's control level, Zhou Shu Xia came under greater pressure but still struggled toward the door. At that moment, Zhou Shu Xia realized that Luo Zi Lu was questioning Lu Qi while secretly keeping track of his condition in the basement. Even though he was exhausted, Zhou Shu Xia continued moving forward step by step, believing that everything would change if he could just open the door. Just as Zhou Shu Xia was about to reach the door, the system suddenly activated a new map called the Door, opening another side mission. When he was young, Luo Zi You burst into tears inside a locked room, while Luo Zi Lu held his younger brother, and tried to reassure him that he would find a way to get them both out. In the darkness, Luo Zi Lu was determined to find a way out himself because he knew they could not rely on anyone to come and rescue them. Luo Zi Lu lifted a chair and began trying to break down the door that was keeping the two brothers trapped. After several powerful strikes, the door still would not open, making Luo Zi Lu increasingly anxious and frustrated. He checked their situation again and reminded himself that no matter what happened, he had to rely on himself to get Luo Zi You out. Finally, the door gave way, and Zhou Shu Xia appeared, asking the two children if they were okay. Looking at the two children in front of him, Zhou Shu Xia suddenly realized that they were actually Luo Zi Lu and Luo Zi You when they were young. When Luo Zi Lu asked his name, Zhou Shu Xia became even more confused because he did not know whether to reveal his real identity or use another name. Luo Zi Lu calmly introduced himself and his younger brother, leaving Zhou Shu Xia stunned when he heard those familiar names. Looking at the younger Luo Zi Lu, Zhou Shu Xia could not help thinking that he was completely different from the cold man he had become in the present. He began wondering whether saving Luo Zi Lu in the past was actually one of the links that led to everything happening now. Since the system did not require him to reveal his real identity, Zhou Shu Xia decided to use the name Zhou Mei, and told Luo Zi Lu that he would help him. Young Luo Zi Lu seriously memorized that name, while Zhou Shu Xia believed that this connection could become something uniquely meaningful between them. Moments later, the system confirmed that the side mission was complete and awarded Zhou Shu Xia 10 gold coins. Back in the present, Lu Qi still refused to reveal what he knew because he had once promised Luo Zi You that he would keep it a secret. Lu Qi left, while Zhou Shu Xia quietly watched him, and realized that he needed to find a way to make Lu Qi notice his presence. Just then, Lu Qi received a call about Shu Xia's whereabouts and made it clear that the news about him was extremely important. After Lu Qi left, Luo Zi Lu suddenly appeared and coldly ordered Zhou Shu Xia to come out of hiding. Zhou Shu Xia faced Luo Zi Lu and explained that he had not called for Lu Qi's help because he still had not uncovered the truth that could help him. He repeated his promise to help Luo Zi Lu because their goal was still the same, uncovering the truth behind Luo Zi Yu's death. Thinking about Lu Qi leaving moments earlier, Zhou Shu Xia suddenly noticed a strange number appearing on him. Zhou Shu Xia realized that Luo Zi Lu did not have the same number, making him suspicious of Lu Qi's true identity. The question of who Lu Qi really was remained unanswered, while Zhou Shu Xia had no choice but to continue hiding his presence. The system immediately issued the main mission. Zhou Shu Xia had to escape from the basement before Lu Qi left, while also making Lu Qi notice him. As he reviewed everything he had discovered, Zhou Shu Xia suddenly remembered his own school bag, and realized that there was still one unexplained detail. The clues surrounding Lu Qi and Zhou Shu Xia's identity continued to be recorded by the system, while the main mission was approaching its final stage. Finally, the system confirmed that the main mission had been completed and awarded Zhou Shu Xia 500 gold coins. The system confirmed that Zhou Shu Xia's condition for clearing the game was to uncover the truth while also making Luo Zi Lu genuinely fall for him. Zhou Shu Xia understood that he could no longer sit back. He had to prove his value, uncover the truth, and find a way to stay by Luo Zi Lu's side. Yet when faced with the mission to make him fall in love, Zhou Shu Xia had absolutely no idea where to begin. Memories of the promise to stay together forever made him realize that, for Luo Zi Lu, such promises had probably never been simple. Luo Zi Lu himself had once wondered why people always made promises of forever, only to eventually leave him behind. In his memories, Luo Zi Yu's promise that the brothers would always stay together made Luo Zi Lu's pain even more apparent. When he received the news that Luo Zi You had died, Luo Zi Lu stopped believing in such promises. Yet in the present, he still chose to keep Zhou Shu Xia by his side. Luo Zi Lu made it clear that until the truth was uncovered, Zhou Shu Xia was not allowed to leave him, marking the beginning of a change in their relationship. Zhou Shu Xia immediately recognized the opportunity and decided that if he got the chance, he would use it to gain the upper hand in the mission. After making that promise to Luo Zi Lu, the two fell into a tense silence, but the distance between them no longer felt the same. As the distance between them narrowed, Luo Zi Lu suddenly remarked that Zhou Shu Xia needed to take a shower, leaving him embarrassed and unsure how to respond. Meanwhile, at the convenience store, the employees found Zhou Shu Xia's house key and began worrying because he had been gone for far too long. Lu Qi stared at the key but remained calm, believing it was still too early to call the police because he was certain Zhou Shu Xia was not in immediate danger. Meanwhile, Zhou Shu Xia realized that Luo Zi Lu had actually brought him to the bathroom, making him even more nervous in his presence. In the steamy room, Zhou Shu Xia tried to stay calm, but Luo Zi Lu's gaze made it impossible for him to relax as usual. Luo Zi Lu suddenly asked why Zhou Shu Xia still wanted to escape the basement if he genuinely wanted to help uncover the truth. Zhou Shu Xia explained that he was afraid of the dark and did not want to be alone in the basement, then reaffirmed that he would still keep his promise to help. When Zhou Shu Xia thought Luo Zi Lu was about to question him, Luo Zi Lu instead calmly helped him relax, making the atmosphere even harder to read. Luo Zi Lu explained that he had only ever done this for Luo Zi You, a small detail that made Zhou Shu Xia even more interested in his past. The silence made Zhou Shu Xia uncomfortable, so he quickly spoke up to break the tension and asked Luo Zi Lu not to be too gentle. In the end, instead of continuing to feel tense, Zhou Shu Xia could only pretend to be strong and stay composed in the face of Luo Zi Lu's unexpected concern. Luo Zi Lu received a phone call and immediately prepared to leave, while Zhou Shu Xia, having just finished showering, started sneezing after spending so long in the basement. Seeing that Zhou Shu Xia was uncomfortable, Luo Zi Lu scolded him while reminding him that going outside after a hot shower could easily make him catch a cold. Before leaving, Luo Zi Lu told Zhou Shu Xia to sleep in the living room, but Zhou Shu Xia used his fear of the dark as an excuse to ask to stay with him. Luo Zi Lu only left him with a promise: if Zhou Shu Xia behaved well this time, he would consider letting him go outside next time. Elsewhere, Luo Zi Lu prepared to face a powerful opponent while someone reminded him that he had to win. The pressure increased as someone else had also placed a bet on the outcome of his match. Afterward, Luo Zi Lu took a bottle of water and was told that the clue he had previously asked someone to investigate had finally surfaced. Just then, the system gave Zhou Shu Xia a new mission: requiring him to open all the videos saved to the account within a limited time. Although he did not want to take on the mission, Zhou Shu Xia realized that Luo Zi Lu had not returned yet, giving him a rare chance to investigate on his own. Zhou Shu Xia logged into the account and was surprised to find that the system seemed to have already saved the information, making him question his own abilities. When the old videos appeared, Zhou Shu Xia was shocked to realize that some of the footage might be directly connected to the mystery surrounding Luo Zi Yu's death. He quickly went through the earlier recordings, trying to figure out what had happened in the room where everything had begun. Eventually, Zhou Shu Xia found a video featuring Luo Zi You and immediately focused on every detail. While Zhou Shu Xia was investigating, Luo Zi Lu returned in an unusual condition, as if the effects of some medication had not completely worn off. His vision began to blur, and Luo Zi Lu could only struggle to stay focused as he searched for a place where he could stabilize himself. When he entered the room, the first person Luo Zi Lu looked for was Zhou Shu Xia, but Zhou Shu Xia was already trying to hide the video from him. Zhou Shu Xia realized that Luo Zi Lu had returned and immediately tried to keep him from seeing what he had just discovered. The door opened, and Luo Zi Lu saw Zhou Shu Xia using the computer, immediately suspecting that he was secretly contacting Lu Qi. Zhou Shu Xia quickly explained that he only wanted something to pass the time and admitted that he had used the computer without permission. Luo Zi Lu did not easily believe the explanation, and the atmosphere between them quickly became tense. Zhou Shu Xia took responsibility and said that if he had truly done something wrong, he was willing to accept whatever consequences Luo Zi Lu decided. His unexpected attitude made Luo Zi Lu pause because Zhou Shu Xia was acting completely differently from his usual defiant self. Luo Zi Lu moved closer while still not fully clear-headed, making Zhou Shu Xia realize that his reactions were becoming increasingly unusual. The farther Zhou Shu Xia stepped back, the more unsettled Luo Zi Lu became, but he still tried to reassure him that he would not hurt him this time. Zhou Shu Xia realized that Luo Zi Lu was genuinely not himself and repeatedly called his name, trying to keep him focused as the tension between them continued to grow. At that exact moment, the system activated another mission, requiring Luo Zi Lu to watch all of the videos within 60 minutes. Zhou Shu Xia tried to bring Luo Zi Lu back to his senses, but his condition was already completely abnormal. Luo Zi Lu grabbed Zhou Shu Xia's hand, making him realize that Luo Zi Lu could barely hear what he was saying. Luo Zi Lu's unusual reaction frightened Zhou Shu Xia, leaving him unsure how to bring him back to normal. He repeatedly called for the system's help, but the system remained silent at the exact moment he needed it most. As Luo Zi Lu held him firmly, Zhou Shu Xia realized that his strength was overwhelming, making it nearly impossible to break free on his own. Zhou Shu Xia tried to resist, but even that was not enough to bring Luo Zi Lu back to his senses. Luo Zi Lu remained trapped in an unstable state, while Zhou Shu Xia began to feel desperate because he could not find a solution. The longer the situation continued, the more Zhou Shu Xia realized that things were slipping beyond his control. Zhou Shu Xia could only search for another solution before the system's mission came to an end. Just then, the system reminded him of the most important requirement. He had to make Luo Zi Lu watch the entire video. Time was running out, forcing Zhou Shu Xia to quickly find a way to complete the mission without letting the situation go any further. He understood that if the mission failed, all of the mental energy he had accumulated through the system could be taken away. After a brief hesitation, Zhou Shu Xia decided to try one final approach to help Luo Zi Lu regain control of himself. He cautiously moved closer and tried to help Luo Zi Lu, even though he was still extremely nervous. The moment only made Zhou Shu Xia more confused, but he reminded himself that he had no choice but to keep going. When Luo Zi Lu's reaction began to change, Zhou Shu Xia still could not tell whether his approach was actually working. Time continued to pass, and the countdown made Zhou Shu Xia increasingly anxious because the mission was still incomplete. The system warned that only 10 minutes remained, forcing Zhou Shu Xia to find a faster way to finish the mission. Zhou Shu Xia decided to continue with his current approach, hoping to complete the mission before the countdown reached 0. Eventually, the distance between them became almost non-existent for a brief moment, leaving both Zhou Shu Xia and Luo Zi Lu momentarily stunned. After that moment, Zhou Shu Xia quickly composed himself and tried to find a reason to step away from the tense atmosphere. He soon regained his focus, sat down, and continued watching the remaining footage. In the video, Luo Zi You appeared and asked someone to record a scene for an audition, making Zhou Shu Xia immediately focus on every detail. Once the entire video had finished playing, Zhou Shu Xia finally realized that Luo Zi You had not actually been bullied by him as he had once believed. But just as the truth became clear, Zhou Shu Xia looked at Luo Zi Lu and noticed that his expression seemed even worse than before. After watching the entire video, Luo Zi Lu began to suspect that Zhou Shu Xia might not have been the person who harmed Luo Zi You as he had once believed, but the remaining clues were still not enough for Luo Zi Lu to completely trust him. Alone in the quiet room, Luo Zi Lu continued piecing together every detail surrounding his younger brother's death. Luo Zi Yu's written messages from the memories only pulled him deeper into questions that still had no answers. So even though his doubts had begun to change, Luo Zi Lu reminded himself that he still could not completely trust Zhou Shu Xia. After taking a shower, Luo Zi Lu returned and saw Zhou Shu Xia still lying there resting. Zhou Shu Xia was sleeping so deeply that he barely noticed Luo Zi Lu standing beside him. Luo Zi Lu called out to him and told him to take a shower, but received almost no response. When he touched Zhou Shu Xia, he realized that Zhou Shu Xia had a fever and was much warmer than usual. Seeing Zhou Shu Xia in such a weak state, Luo Zi Lu began wondering whether he should let him go. But if Zhou Shu Xia was truly innocent, everything that had happened between them might lead him to contact the police as soon as he was free. After a long silence, Luo Zi Lu decided that he still could not let Zhou Shu Xia leave. He picked Zhou Shu Xia up, while Zhou Shu Xia could only vaguely realize that he was being carried somewhere. When he regained some awareness, Zhou Shu Xia was surprised to find himself in Luo Zi Lu's arms. He immediately thought that this change might have been caused by what Luo Zi Lu had just seen in the video. Because of that, Zhou Shu Xia decided to use Luo Zi Lu's growing guilt to bring them closer. But instead of continuing to calculate his next move, Zhou Shu Xia reassured Luo Zi Lu that he was not in pain and that Luo Zi Lu did not need to blame himself. Moved by his sincerity, Luo Zi Lu finally softened his voice and apologized for losing control of himself. The atmosphere gradually became calmer, and Zhou Shu Xia eventually drifted into an exhausted sleep. Luo Zi Lu turned away and let him rest, while Zhou Shu Xia secretly pretended to remain asleep. When sunlight filled the room, Zhou Shu Xia woke up and realized that his body was still extremely weak. The moment he spoke, he was startled by how hoarse his own voice sounded after a night of fever. Just then, the system appeared and announced that his mission interface had been updated. Zhou Shu Xia quickly noticed that the system had begun displaying his intimacy level with Luo Zi Lu, although it had only reached a very small percentage. The system explained that when the value was still negative, the progress would not be displayed, and only reaching 100% would complete the main mission. Realizing that everything from the previous night had not been completely useless, Zhou Shu Xia felt relieved to finally see a clear path forward. But when he looked around the quiet room, he immediately wondered where Luo Zi Lu had gone. Meanwhile, Luo Zi Lu had gone to Zhou Shu Xia's room, opened the door, and begun searching through it. When an item fell out of a cabinet, Luo Zi Lu froze upon realizing that it was Luo Zi Yu's phone, making his suspicions about Zhou Shu Xia even stronger. Zhou Shu Xia sat on the bed, realizing that Luo Zi Lu's attitude seemed to have changed slightly after everything he had seen. But Zhou Shu Xia quickly pushed the thought aside because the most important thing was still finding the person responsible for Luo Zi Yu's death. Just then, a notification sounded, and Zhou Shu Xia immediately realized that Luo Zi Lu had returned. Before he could collect himself, Zhou Shu Xia started coughing and could only weakly ask if Luo Zi Lu had just gotten back. Luo Zi Lu appeared with a suitcase, making Zhou Shu Xia curious about what was inside. It turned out to contain Zhou Shu Xia's clothes and personal belongings because Luo Zi Lu wanted him to stay there with him from now on. The unexpected offer left Zhou Shu Xia surprised. He even wondered how their relationship could have changed so much after his intimacy level had only increased slightly. While Zhou Shu Xia was still thinking about it, Luo Zi Lu told him to go downstairs and bring up anything he still needed from the basement. The two went downstairs together, making Zhou Shu Xia even more confused when Luo Zi Lu kept walking closely behind him. When Luo Zi Lu called his name, Zhou Shu Xia immediately turned around, and Luo Zi Lu began directly asking why he had brought him there in the first place. Zhou Shu Xia could only bring up the fact that Luo Zi Yu's diary had once been filled with his name, which was what had initially made Luo Zi Lu suspicious of him. Luo Zi Lu admitted that those notes were not enough to prove Zhou Shu Xia was guilty, but the appearance of a missing personal item was an entirely different matter. When Luo Zi Lu questioned him about Luo Zi Yu's phone, Zhou Shu Xia froze, because he could not understand why it had appeared inside his closet either. Any hope Zhou Shu Xia had just found immediately collapsed when Luo Zi Lu pushed him down onto the basement floor. Luo Zi Lu coldly said that Zhou Shu Xia should know what it felt like to see hope appear, only to suddenly fall into despair. Lying on the floor, Zhou Shu Xia was both confused and desperate to understand how Luo Zi Yu's phone had ended up in his home. The more he thought about it, the less sense it made, because every piece of evidence seemed to be pushing him further into an impossible position. Inside Luo Zi Yu's room, Luo Zi Lu stared at a photo of his younger brother and wondered if everything was happening all over again. He remembered how Luo Zi Yu had been hurt before and how he himself had been deceived more than once, making his doubts grow even stronger. Luo Zi Lu decided that from now on, he would not allow himself to waver again and wanted to bring everything to an end as quickly as possible. With that thought in mind, Luo Zi Lu returned to the basement, where Zhou Shu Xia was still lying on the floor. Zhou Shu Xia looked up in panic and tried to explain that there had to be some kind of misunderstanding between them. He begged Luo Zi Lu to calm down, but Luo Zi Lu's expression was no longer easy to sway. Luo Zi Lu continued moving forward, firmly declaring that he would not allow himself to be deceived again. Zhou Shu Xia could only panic as the situation slipped beyond his control, and none of his explanations seemed to reach Luo Zi Lu. The scene faded into darkness, leaving a heavy sense that their relationship had once again been pushed to the brink. 30 minutes earlier, outside Luo Zi Lu's house, Lu Qi had spotted the suitcase and immediately realized that Zhou Shu Xia was probably staying with him. Lu Qi clenched his resolve and silently vowed that in this lifetime, he would never let Zhou Shu Xia die again. Zhou Shu Xia curled up on the floor, repeatedly wondering why Luo Zi Yu's phone had appeared in his home. The more he thought about it, the more confused he became, but he reminded himself that there had to be part of the truth that the system had not revealed to him yet. So Zhou Shu Xia decided to keep completing his missions and search for more clues about the truth. Just then, Luo Zi Lu stood in front of him and coldly asked if he was awake. Zhou Shu Xia instinctively pulled back, having no idea what Luo Zi Lu planned to do next. As Luo Zi Lu approached, his calm demeanor made Zhou Shu Xia even more uneasy. Luo Zi Lu secured the restraints while calmly warning that he would not let Zhou Shu Xia simply walk away from what had happened. His cold smile made Zhou Shu Xia realize that Luo Zi Lu was genuinely furious this time. Zhou Shu Xia quickly changed his approach because he understood that continuing to beg for forgiveness and explain himself might only make things worse. After a brief silence, Zhou Shu Xia decided to face Luo Zi Lu directly instead of continuing to avoid him. He lay down and let Luo Zi Lu make the decision, leaving Luo Zi Lu suspicious of his unusual attitude. When Luo Zi Lu asked if he had finally stopped pretending to be innocent, Zhou Shu Xia honestly replied that Luo Zi Lu had never wanted to hear any explanation in the first place. Zhou Shu Xia believed that Luo Zi Lu was not truly focused on the truth, but was simply looking for somewhere to release his anger. Zhou Shu Xia wiped away his tears and calmly accepted the situation, making Luo Zi Lu pause for the first time at the words, "Take out his anger." Inside, Zhou Shu Xia breathed a sigh of relief because at least Luo Zi Lu had started communicating with him instead of being completely controlled by his emotions. But moments later, Zhou Shu Xia noticed the rope in Luo Zi Lu's hand, and immediately felt the tension return. Luo Zi Lu remained cold as he began taking action, while Zhou Shu Xia could only try to stay calm in the dangerous situation. As the pressure increased, Zhou Shu Xia panicked and tried to find a way to make Luo Zi Lu stop. Luo Zi Lu stood still and watched him, his expression growing darker as he observed Zhou Shu Xia's reaction. At the most tense moment, Luo Zi Lu suddenly loosened the rope, as if he himself had begun to hesitate. Zhou Shu Xia stared in confusion, realizing that this was not how Luo Zi Lu normally acted, and began wondering if he was deliberately holding back. When Luo Zi Lu released the rope, Zhou Shu Xia lost his balance and fell, even more confused about why he had suddenly stopped. Zhou Shu Xia watched Luo Zi Lu walk away, confused and wondering why he seemed even angrier than before. The scene gradually faded into darkness, while outside the house, another search was quietly underway. Lu Qi sat in the darkness, patiently trying different numbers to figure out the password and open the door in front of him. One combination after another was tested, showing that Lu Qi had no intention of giving up on finding a way inside. In the darkness, Lu Qi's search continued, opening up a new direction as the situation grew increasingly complicated. Luo Zi Yu's phone lay in front of Luo Zi Lu, who stared at it intently as if waiting for an important clue. Luo Zi Lu picked up the phone, convinced that it had to contain something that could prove Zhou Shu Xia's connection to the case, but even after being fully charged, the phone still would not turn on, making Luo Zi Lu immediately lose patience. His frustration grew as he tightened his grip on the phone, feeling as though every clue had been blocked once again. Sweat quietly appeared on Luo Zi Lu's face as he tried to keep his emotions under control. Finally, he threw the phone onto the floor in frustration and sat there in silence. Luo Zi Lu sat quietly in his chair as the room fell into a heavy silence. After putting out his cigarette, Luo Zi Lu's expression remained just as cold. Looking at Zhou Shu Xia in front of him, he suddenly wondered why he had started to waver when it came to him. Just then, the system revealed the main mission: uncover the truth behind Luo Zi Yu's missing phone. The system continued by explaining that items belonging to Luo Zi Yu could trigger fragments of memory, opening up a new direction for the investigation. Zhou Shu Xia immediately realized that he only had 3 chances to make the right choices this time, leaving him frustrated but especially cautious. He understood that he had to find Luo Zi Yu's belongings while also choosing the correct items that could trigger the memories. While thinking, Zhou Shu Xia suddenly heard a noise and realized that Luo Zi Lu had returned. He quickly tried to stand up, but his injured leg caused him to lose his balance, immediately drawing Luo Zi Lu's attention. Luo Zi Lu checked Zhou Shu Xia's leg and saw that the bandage was still secure, then decided not to let him move around on his own. He bent down and picked Zhou Shu Xia up, reminding him not to move too much so he would not worsen the injury. Zhou Shu Xia was stunned because this time Luo Zi Lu did not question him or put him under more pressure. Instead, he simply carried him back in silence. But Zhou Shu Xia still could not believe that this change was genuine, and even suspected that Luo Zi Lu might be planning another way to deal with him. Luo Zi Lu put Zhou Shu Xia down and told him to clean the room himself if he wanted to continue staying there. Zhou Shu Xia stared in confusion at the simple request because he had been expecting something completely different. The more he thought about it, the more Zhou Shu Xia suspected that this might be some kind of hidden plan Luo Zi Lu was deliberately keeping from him. But after observing for a while, he realized that Luo Zi Lu really was simply asking him to do some housework. Zhou Shu Xia started cleaning, but in his clumsy attempt, he accidentally dropped an item, immediately making Luo Zi Lu frown. Luo Zi Lu called Zhou Shu Xia over, and he quickly lowered his head, admitted his mistake, and tried to explain. Instead of continuing the argument, Luo Zi Lu pulled Zhou Shu Xia closer and came up with another way to make sure he remembered the lesson. Zhou Shu Xia became nervous when Luo Zi Lu used a pen to write a reminder on his clothing, while his own thoughts began drifting in a completely different direction. Those unexpected thoughts gradually made Zhou Shu Xia blush, but Luo Zi Lu calmly announced that he was finished. Before Zhou Shu Xia could figure out what had happened, Luo Zi Lu's phone suddenly began vibrating repeatedly. The security system immediately displayed an alert that an unfamiliar person was standing outside the house. Luo Zi Lu looked at the screen, instantly becoming alert and wondering who would show up at the door so late at night. Luo Zi Lu checked the security camera and saw someone had appeared outside, but it seemed to be nothing more than a delivery package. He stepped outside to check and quickly returned, giving Zhou Shu Xia a rare moment to act. Luo Zi Lu glanced at Zhou Shu Xia, noticing how exhausted he looked, and that his injuries had not fully recovered. Seeing this, Luo Zi Lu simply found it troublesome and turned away, while Zhou Shu Xia immediately took the opportunity to continue his mission. Zhou Shu Xia got back up and realized that there were many items in the house that had once belonged to Luo Zi You, but the mission only gave him 3 chances to investigate, so every choice had to be considered carefully. He began searching the room, trying to find an item that might be connected to the truth behind the missing phone. Just then, Luo Zi Lu brought over a wheelchair and told Zhou Shu Xia to sit down so he could continue cleaning. The wheelchair immediately caught Zhou Shu Xia's attention because it seemed far too unusual to have been left in the house by coincidence. But after thinking it over, Zhou Shu Xia decided not to check it yet and continued searching for something more directly connected to the case. He considered Luo Zi Yu's clothes, backpack, and electronic devices, but still could not find a clear direction. Zhou Shu Xia also remembered the storage room where he had hidden before and began wondering if it might contain an important clue. While Zhou Shu Xia was thinking, Luo Zi Lu appeared with a broom and casually answered his question about boxing training. The broom was suddenly tossed toward him, startling Zhou Shu Xia and reminding him that he did not have much time left to search. Zhou Shu Xia continued reasoning, wondering if the important item might actually be somewhere completely different from what he had expected. He turned and asked Luo Zi Lu about his injury, but Luo Zi Lu's silence only made Zhou Shu Xia more confused. Luo Zi Lu suddenly asked if Zhou Shu Xia was concerned about him, leaving Zhou Shu Xia embarrassed when he realized he had said too much. Luo Zi Lu then simply told him to hurry up and clean before turning away to collect the package that had just arrived. Watching him walk away, Zhou Shu Xia realized that his window of opportunity was getting shorter by the minute. He decided that he had to find Luo Zi Yu's phone because it was still the most important clue in the mission. While searching, Zhou Shu Xia suddenly spotted another phone on the table, and immediately suspected that it might be the item he was looking for. With no time to think, he quickly picked up the phone and decided to try activating the mission first. At the same time, Luo Zi Lu received the package and noticed that the recipient's name was clearly listed as Luo Zi You. He opened the package, and the item inside immediately made Luo Zi Lu pause. A fragment of Luo Zi Lu's memory began to surface, taking him back to a time when Luo Zi You was still by his side. In the memory, Luo Zi Lu complained that his younger brother was trying too hard to stand out, but his tone still carried the familiar warmth of two brothers. Luo Zi You happily explained that he had prepared everything needed to help his brother look his best before the performance. Luo Zi Lu helplessly tapped his younger brother on the head, revealing a rare moment between the brothers before the memory faded. Back in the present, Zhou Shu Xia had barely touched the phone when the system immediately announced that a memory had been activated. The first memory fragment opened, pulling Zhou Shu Xia into an image directly connected to the scene where Luo Zi You had died. When the memory ended, the system confirmed that the scene had been unlocked and could be reviewed through the item interface. Zhou Shu Xia was stunned by what he had just seen because the memory seemed to confirm that he had once taken the phone away from the scene. Hearing footsteps approaching, Zhou Shu Xia immediately moved back toward the wheelchair to avoid being discovered. Luo Zi Lu returned and saw Zhou Shu Xia lying nearby, making him immediately tense because he feared everything had been discovered. Luo Zi Lu put the items down and walked closer, but he said nothing about the phone or what Zhou Shu Xia had just done. Zhou Shu Xia tried to stay calm and reassured himself that even if he had been discovered, he still had a way to deal with the situation. Luo Zi Lu suddenly picked Zhou Shu Xia up and took out a nail care tool, leaving him completely unable to guess what Luo Zi Lu intended to do. He calmly trimmed Zhou Shu Xia's nails and even asked whether it hurt, causing the tense atmosphere to shift into something much harder to read. Noticing that Zhou Shu Xia's palms were covered in sweat, Luo Zi Lu asked if he was afraid that he might hurt him, while Zhou Shu Xia could only answer cautiously. Outside, Lu Qi suddenly heard Zhou Shu Xia's voice through a device and immediately became worried, wondering what Luo Zi Lu was doing to him. Zhou Shu Xia looked at his scratched finger and realized that Luo Zi Lu had a habit of trimming nails very close, sometimes touching the sensitive skin underneath. Zhou Shu Xia remembered how carefully Luo Zi Lu had trimmed his nails, even though his expression remained cold and difficult to read. When Zhou Shu Xia accidentally moved, Luo Zi Lu immediately held his hand still and reminded him not to move so the injury would not get worse. Luo Zi Lu reached toward Zhou Shu Xia and told him to clean up the small amount of blood before sitting still again. Zhou Shu Xia realized that the scratch was not particularly painful, but the unexpected sensation was enough to make him tense. Zhou Shu Xia calmly treated the injury while Luo Zi Lu remained seated, quietly observing his every reaction. After a while, Luo Zi Lu finally asked whether Zhou Shu Xia had finished everything he had been asked to do. Zhou Shu Xia said that he had finished cleaning and then offered to cook, hoping to gain more time to observe the house. While talking, Zhou Shu Xia continued calculating his next move because he only had 2 chances left to inspect items that might be connected to Luo Zi You. Luo Zi Lu asked whether Zhou Shu Xia really knew how to cook, and Zhou Shu Xia explained that he could at least prepare simple dishes and soup. Zhou Shu Xia said he only needed some basic seasonings, but Luo Zi Lu said nothing, and simply stood up and walked toward the cabinet. Luo Zi Lu took out a piece of paper and asked Zhou Shu Xia to write down the ingredients they needed, unintentionally giving him another opportunity to look around. Looking at the paper in his hand, Zhou Shu Xia immediately thought that his second chance to investigate might be hidden among the items around the house. Zhou Shu Xia began thinking about searching for clues while preparing the meal. While outside, Lu Qi continued trying to listen through the device. Lu Qi realized that the listening device could not maintain a connection from too far away, so he had to quickly find another way to contact Zhou Shu Xia directly. Meanwhile, the kitchen quickly became chaotic. Luo Zi Lu looked at the mess and began wondering if this was really what Zhou Shu Xia considered cooking. Zhou Shu Xia also realized that the wheelchair was making it extremely difficult to move around, especially while he was trying to search for clues. When the wheelchair bumped into a can, Luo Zi Lu immediately stopped it and reminded Zhou Shu Xia not to make the kitchen even messier. Zhou Shu Xia could only apologize because, at that point, moving forward or backing away both seemed difficult. Luo Zi Lu looked at him helplessly and sighed, as if he had no idea what to do with such a clumsy situation. Finally, Luo Zi Lu walked over and helped Zhou Shu Xia out of the wheelchair so he could move around more easily. Zhou Shu Xia froze in surprise but still tried to explain what had happened to the food that had just been knocked over. While Zhou Shu Xia was thinking about how to gain another advantage from the mission, Luo Zi Lu suddenly turned and walked away, leaving him confused about what he was planning. Only when Zhou Shu Xia saw Luo Zi Lu return to clean the floor did he realize that the mess still had to be dealt with. But instead of getting angry, Luo Zi Lu simply walked into the kitchen and started preparing the meal himself. Zhou Shu Xia stared in surprise as Luo Zi Lu quickly handled everything, completely different from the short-tempered side Zhou Shu Xia had always expected. The more he watched, the less Zhou Shu Xia understood why Luo Zi Lu could remain so calm after the kitchen had become such a mess, quietly cleaning everything before continuing to cook. That calmness reminded Zhou Shu Xia of his past, when even a small mistake had been enough to bring harsh criticism. Old memories resurfaced, showing Zhou Shu Xia being yelled at and sent outside simply because he had ruined something minor. Back in the present, Zhou Shu Xia remained stunned, unable to understand why Luo Zi Lu was not angry with him. Luo Zi Lu played placed the meal on the table and calmly looked at Zhou Shu Xia, leaving him both cautious and curious about what would happen next. There was no anger in Luo Zi Lu's eyes as Zhou Shu Xia had expected, only a cold expression that was difficult to read. Finally, Luo Zi Lu pushed the bowl toward Zhou Shu Xia and added another 500 to the debt he owed. Zhou Shu Xia took the bowl in confusion, feeling that the scene in front of him seemed strangely familiar. Looking at the steaming food, Zhou Shu Xia suddenly remembered an image from a commercial he had seen as a child. After taking a bite, Zhou Shu Xia could not deny that the food tasted surprisingly good, even though the price he had to pay still made him feel a little bitter. In an atmosphere that had always been tense, Zhou Shu Xia finally sat there eating in surprise, while Luo Zi Lu remained perfectly calm as if nothing unusual had happened. Zhou Shu Xia held the bowl of soup and unexpectedly felt a little warmth that he had not experienced in a very long time. But moments later, Zhou Shu Xia bitterly realized that the things people called warmth in life were rarely ever free. The system's voice echoed in his mind, reminding him that getting what he needed always came with a price. A wave of chaotic sounds suddenly rushed in, pulling Zhou Shu Xia's mind into an unstable memory state. Distorted images kept appearing, frightening Zhou Shu Xia, as if part of an old memory was trying to drag him back. Zhou Shu Xia suddenly sat up and realized that he had unknowingly fallen asleep on the sofa. After calming down, he guessed that Luo Zi Lu was probably still resting, so he decided to use the opportunity to inspect another item. Zhou Shu Xia left the sofa and began searching the silent house for something that might be connected to Luo Zi You. His eyes soon stopped on the notebook that Luo Zi Lu often mentioned, filled with numerous entries related to Zhou Shu Xia himself. But when the wheelchair blocked his way, Zhou Shu Xia nearly lost his balance and had to find a way to crawl toward the notebook. He quietly moved closer, hoping that this notebook was truly the item the system was looking for. Zhou Shu Xia looked at the notebook hopefully, knowing that if it was the correct item, his second chance would not be wasted. He still could not understand why Luo Zi Lu believed that the pages filled with his name were full of resentment, almost like a cursed journal. When he opened the notebook, Zhou Shu Xia found entries about Lu Qi, interviews, and even events involving himself. The deeper he read, the more he realized that this was not an ordinary diary. Many of the entries carried an unusually heavy emotional weight. When he saw his own name alongside sections that had been blacked out, Zhou Shu Xia immediately realized that the notebook could be an important clue. Just then, the system confirmed the item and began activating the second memory fragment. After a few seconds of countdown, Luo Zi Yu's memory suddenly opened before Zhou Shu Xia. In the memory, Luo Zi Yu angrily demanded to know how his secret had ended up being discovered by Lu Qi. Zhou Shu Xia tried to explain that he had never told Lu Qi about it, but his explanation did not seem enough to erase the suspicion. Luo Zi Yu believed that Zhou Shu Xia was the person who had once seen the diary, making him the only one who could have known that secret. Finally, Luo Zi Yu looked at Zhou Shu Xia with a deeply hurt expression and said that he hated him. Faced with those emotions, Zhou Shu Xia could only suggest that Luo Zi Yu see a therapist and work through the problems he had been carrying. The memory fragment quickly ended, leaving Zhou Shu Xia once again alone with everything he had just witnessed. He held his head and complained that, in the memory, everything somehow made him look guilty, from betraying a friend to secretly reading the diary. But after everything, Zhou Shu Xia still tried to figure out whether there were any other clues he had overlooked besides the diary. Just then, the room suddenly went dark, and Zhou Shu Xia realized that the lights in the house had gone out. He pulled back the curtains and discovered that the street lights were out as well as if the entire area had lost power. Through the window, Zhou Shu Xia suddenly spotted a masked man standing outside and immediately recognized him as Lu Qi. Zhou Shu Xia was startled, unable to understand why Lu Qi had appeared outside the house at exactly this moment. When he noticed the phone Lu Qi was holding up, Zhou Shu Xia realized that the package contained a listening device, and that Lu Qi was trying to contact him. But just then, Luo Zi Lu entered carrying a candle, forcing Zhou Shu Xia to hide the fact that Lu Qi was outside. Luo Zi Lu announced that the building management had sent a warning about someone deliberately cutting the power and instructed everyone not to go outside. He then looked at the notebook and directly asked Zhou Shu Xia whether he had read Luo Zi Yu's diary. Turning to the later pages, Luo Zi Lu pointed out a line referring to Zhou Shu Xia as him, and mentioned that this person had once caused Luo Zi Yu emotional pain. Luo Zi Lu held up the candle as a warning, while Zhou Shu Xia quickly argued that if that person were really him, the diary could have simply used his name. Just as the atmosphere became tense, the phone kept vibrating, and Luo Zi Lu abruptly ended the call. A message from Lu Qi still appeared, saying that he would come to the house later. Luo Zi Lu only frowned and coldly muttered in annoyance. What do you think Zhou Shu Xia is really hiding, and how long will Luo Zi Lu continue to trust him? Share your theories about these two characters in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, do not forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next chapter.